It should be recording. Let me just check. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 minute, Pete, to make sure this is recording because I don't have it on my screen.
All right.
It is.
Okay. Then let's go ahead and get started. Got a lot of great content. As long as it's we're recording.
So Ronney, we're going to start off as announcing when Pete's going to be doing this.
I'm seeing internet connection unstable. And I do see that we're recording, so. Are you ready, Ronney?
I think not, Pete.
You guys are coming through loud and clear, crystal clarity.
Good.
We are happy about that today. I think Ronnie's talking, but I don't hear her.
Well, I want to just, while we have this moment before we begin, welcome everybody. I think you'll hear some interesting new things and see a weave that may help you in your life of different insights and tributaries on my river, my journey. And as soon as our Zoom coordinator, Ronney Aden, lets me know we're ready to go, we'll get started.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry for all the crazy beginnings here. My name is Ronney Aden, and I'm from Evolving Health Education, a 5013C that's hosting this with Pete. This was gifted to us by Vicki Rowe in 1989, and the importance is she was the first metaphysical, spiritual, post-secondary school in the state of California. And so for those of us that are on this spiritual path, she led this path, and we are continuing her legacy. For myself, I've worked with Pete for probably 30 some years and have learned so much, and am so honored to be bringing him back to us again for not only this event, but future events. And I'm going to turn this over to Patty, who's on our board of directors, and she's going to take over now. And again, welcome everybody, and enjoy.
Welcome. This is a great opportunity for everyone to meet our author, Pete A. Sanders, Jr. He's an amazing man, has accomplished a lot in his lifetime, is offering our organization, Evolving Health Education, an opportunity to, before he's giving this incredible 4-part series coming up in October. So Pete will tell you about his background a little bit, because he's awesome about doing all that and telling us how great that he's gotten to this point. So Pete, could you tell us a little bit of background and how you got to be Pete A. Sanders Jr. at this point in your life?
Well, just as an overview first, we're endeavoring to get Free Soul, my foundation's discoveries, to a greater variety of people. And so today we're doing something called an InnerView, which is a get to know you session, and let people listening in, whether they're live or recorded, getting the recorded version, hear the journey of my life from my first real spiritual seeking awakening experience at about age 5 to founding Free Soul in 1980 in Sedona, Arizona. And my meditation preparing for this, I realized I want to share with everybody that the purpose of doing this for me is not to hype myself. Yes, I'm an MIT honors graduate, accepted to Harvard Med School, chose to go into mind, body, spirit education. But the reason I wanted to do this kind of story of the journey of my life is to help anyone who hears it with how to put together the pieces, the different tributaries of their lives, kind of like how to assemble the building blocks of different things they've experienced through their journey to make their own breakthroughs. And look for that as we go through. As I share aspects of my life, see where you might have similarities. Even if you didn't go to MIT, was there a time in your life when you were exposed to academic striving, to questioning? So look for that theme all the way through. And then the end goal of this is to get some of my latest material to you. Science for Living as a Soul, Keys for Foreseeing Your Future Happiness, Success, and Serenity. Now, the foreseeing doesn't just mean psychic vision. There's going to be 4 specific keys that start with the letter C. October 17th, 2 weeks from today, we'll have a free introduction, the Science for Living as a Soul, where I want everybody to have at least the core foundation of my discoveries on stress reduction and tapping the soul. And then starting October 24th, 1 Thursday a week, 11 to noon Pacific time, will be a class on each of these 4 C's that the end goal of is to be able to let you truly shine the spark of the divine through you. So let's get started on the story of the journey. One of my first memories is as a 5-year-old in the basement of some community college with my mom. My mom was a great lady. My dad was killed very early. She lost everything. We really didn't have a lot, but she blessed me by never having me feel poor. But, you know, she didn't have money for babysitters, and she was always a seeker. So one of my first memories is seeing on the chalkboard the symbols of all the different world religions. And the reason I'm saying that's a starting point was it introduced to me one of the 5 elements of a brain-compatible learning environment. This is the other theme I want you to look through, or look for as we go through this. A great educator named Susan Kowalik developed something called the 5 elements of a brain-compatible learning environment, that if you make sure those 5 elements are in everything, you retain better. And what I've done is I've adapted them for spiritual learning. So it isn't just about retaining physically, but it's retaining on a soul level so you can progress on your life purposes more efficiently, more rapidly, without having to go back and repeat things. And one of those 5 elements is choices. You always do better when you have a choice. And seeing all those different world religion symbols, even as a 5-year-old, it made me realize there are many paths up the same mountain. And I was always interested in learning about the truths that span all faiths. And my mother, again, giving her credit, being a seeker, we went to different churches every week or every month. So I got exposed to a lot. But really the next main catalyst for me came at the 1964 New York World's Fair. If any of you have seen the movie Men in Black, that sculpture of the globe with the fountains around it, you see in that movie. But that was the site of the 1964 World's Fair. And the reason it was transformative for me was there was an exhibit called Sermons from Science. And it was put on by scientists who were all people of faith, pointing out the wonders in nature and everything around us. And their capstone presentation was the 1,000,000-volt demonstration. And this is described again, maybe even a little more fully than I'll do it today, in the beginning of the soul chapter of my first book, You Are Psychic, they stood one of the men on a Tesla coil holding a paddle, and they passed 1,000,000 volts of electricity through him. And it burns a flaming streak down the paddle. And basically, the reason it didn't kill him was it was ultra high frequency electricity. So it skips over the surface of the skin. And when it hits the paddle, the higher resistance of wood burns the flaming streak. When they turned off the light and he stepped off and he said, "Why didn't this kill me?" He kind of dumbed down the explanation a little bit. But what he said was, it's because the electricity was at a different frequency than my body. Meaning that most house current people are used to is at low frequency electricity that sinks into the tissue, stops the heart, and that's what kills people. But he then went on to make the case that maybe heaven was just like that. It's right here amongst us, but at a different frequency. And in many ways, that was a precursor of what came decades later called superstrings physics. That is the scientific explanation that you are more than just a body. And that experience at the 1964 World's Fair propelled me to realizing that it's not an either or. It doesn't have to be faith or science, that the two can work together to create a deeper understanding. And really, that's what being a seeker is all about, trying to figure out new pathways, new abilities, new levels of harmony. Now, the next step for me was, because my mom was a seeker, we would have classes in our house. And one of those classes was the weirdest psychic I have ever met. He was an expert on seeing and reading auras, but his system was incredibly bizarre. So picture this guy who looks kind of funny anyway, but he's twitching constantly. And that's because his system was, you would look at the person you were trying to read, and then you'd see where on your body you itched. And then wherever you itched, which is why he was always twitching, you look specifically at that place and what color did you sense or see. And this was so absurd that I think for the first time in my life, I didn't over try. I just kind of said, well, he's in my house for the next hour and a half. I'm stuck here. And I just said, And I saw something for the first time. And when we shared, I saw what he saw. And I had no natural ability before this. So I literally, when I wound up going to MIT, I realized number one key for everybody might be not over trying. Now that I understand more about the limbic brain and how that tends to cut off people's abilities, we'll get to that later, it makes sense. But also, I literally said, if I can learn who have no natural ability, there must be ways of teaching people of all levels of ability and background to learn. And so that's what I headed off to MIT wanting to do. Now, the other pivotal point was in my search, I did a lot of reading. And everybody had heard about Edgar Cayce, the channeler, but I wanted to read his life story. And his life story is a book called There Is a River, which I find fascinating because it matches with that theme of life being a river of exploration. And part of what I'm endeavoring to share in the 4-class Zoom series will be how to be the river, not just the rapids or the rocks. But what most struck me about Edgar Cayce's life story was he supposedly as a young boy was walking in the woods and came upon an angel. And the angel said to him, Edgar, if you could have anything you wanted, what would it be? And he didn't say, I want to be rich, or I want to be famous, or I want to be a genius, or even I want to be psychic, or I want to be a healer. He just said, what I most want is to help people. And I think that's a fundamental key point, that if you go into mind, body, spirit work with the intent of service, you will be joined by the angels, and you'll be blessed with not only personal fulfillment, but insights that can help all people. So that was some of the foundation of how I headed off to MIT. I was exposed to a lot of physics there. I kind of wanted to know, what could science tell us about things like soul, things like how we are able to make decisions and feel like a unique individual. And again, in the soul chapter of You Are Psychic, chapter 8, there's a story called The Day Brain Science Wasn't Enough, when I had a one-on-one tutorial with a top brain science professor, and he basically said, we don't have a clue how the wiring of the brain does that. We got real embarrassed when I asked him, and I'll tell more about that story in depth when we do the October 17th. Again, another free program, but it's the intro to the four class paid Zoom workshop series called Science for Living as a Soul, because I'll go more in depth on how I actually got him to admit from brain science that brain science didn't have a clue how the wiring created consciousness. And in a sense, that was very liberating for me, because it meant, don't limit myself to trying to explain everything scientifically, because the science may not be developed yet. Just like we couldn't prove Einstein's theories experimentally for, in some cases, over 100 years. The last of Einstein's theories, gravity waves, was just experimentally proven in October 2017. I still kept my interest in science. That's why my theme is Science for Living as a Soul, but I was no longer shackled by those strict limitations. And it also led me to exploring more about the psychic senses. I said, well, what can brain science tell us about higher senses, and what can spiritualists tell us? And my minor at MIT was brain science. So you learn about how the different parts of the brain deal with visual processing, auditory processing, et cetera, et cetera. And as I interacted with the psychic and spiritual community of Boston and Cambridge, I noticed both on myself when I was having an impression, and when I talked to some of their best psychics, where they seemed to be getting the input, where their attention was drawn, was not the same areas in the brain or body where the physical sense of vision or hearing or feeling worked for. And so that's where the psychic reception area concept was developed, that went into my first book, You Are Psychic. Most people, when they try to be more psychic, do the exact wrong thing. They literally walk around, I want to be more psychic. And that's actually unsafe. That's like leaving the windows open in mosquito season. And when you know where these psychic reception areas are, you can stay shielded most of the time and tune to those portals when you specifically want to scan. And when you know all four portals, that's why I'm excited if we do a book club on the You Are Psychic book at a later date. We'll read a couple chapters a week, and we'll be able to tell people more than what's in the book about how to safely open their senses. But once you are comfortable with all four, you can do channel switching. And it's equivalent to, well, if I really need to know something about the weather, what does this channel say about the weather? Then turn to the next channel for their weather report. And by putting those pieces together, it actually gives you better information. So that gets you through some of the first leg of my journey. We do have 2 question periods where we have a few minutes where people can ask questions. And then if we don't get to every question, there will be a way people can submit question through Ronney and Evolving Health Education to a Facebook page, and we'll get those answered. But let's take a pause for any questions you have so far.
I've unmuted you so you can talk now if anybody wants to ask a question. Oh,
Pete will proceed with this. So like Pete said, you can actually email Ronney, Evolving Health Education, any questions. If you have a lot of questions, put those on there. So Pete, as a healer and a nurse, I never said I was psychic, but I was considered it very intuitive, being able to access that when I was working with patients, and especially in a healing community, because I did a lot of healing work with my patients. So I guess in a sense I was psychic too, but I didn't claim it as that. I was like you, I was trying to help others, and that was the intention. So always that was at the forefront.
And that's very common among nurses. We have a wonderful instructor, Luce Adams, who's in Orlando, Florida, and is the founder of Integrated Holistic Coaching Academy. And she introduced me decades ago to a wonderful article in a journal called How Expert Nurses Use Intuition. And it documented, just said, Patty, the problem was there weren't specific training courses to help people do it. And the people who did it frequently also didn't know how to turn off the intuition. So they went home at the end of the day open and being bombarded by all the stuff they encountered as they traveled, or they didn't know how to shield their aura so they could sense through feeling or intuition without taking it all the way in and taking home everybody's, heaviness. So that's the other benefit of the knowing the psychic reception areas. And by the way, if you don't want to wait till we do the book club, you can get You Are Psychic at any bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelf, they can get it in 2 or 3 days. It is in 6 other languages. You can go to the freesoul.net website, and I think it's upper right corners, it says foreign language materials, and you can find the ISBN numbers and titles of the book in German, Spanish, Hebrew. It's also in Polish, Estonian, and Russian. But people are welcome to do that. The English version is also available as an ebook and an audible book, and the Spanish version is also available as an ebook. But a lot of what I'm going to be sharing in this new 4-lesson Zoom class, the one that people have to actually register for, that starts on October 24th, is how to better shield the aura and clear out of your aura and your body if you have picked up some of those toxins. Those will be covered in the first 2 lessons, and then we'll go even deeper. But I'm going to move on with our time schedule. Next, I said, well, these discoveries are amazing, but can they work for people in all cultures? Can they work for people in Japan? Can they work for people in Europe? And what I found is ways to refine the techniques so that they would work. My joke is if it works for the Italians, the Germans, and the French, it'll work for anybody. But what you see is me as a naval officer. I chose to do service to my country. I'm a great fan of the freedoms that America gives us. My foundation name, Free Soul, means that when you learn your unlimited potentials, you can be a free soul. And I felt that everybody should give back to country somehow, whether that was military, Peace Corps, work in a classroom, help with forest fires. So I did 5 years voluntary service right at the end of Vietnam. My first ship was a World War II destroyer. If anybody ever watches the end of the Caine Mutiny, the ship that drives out at the end, DD 786, you can see the number on the hull. That's the ship I was on for a year in Japan. Then I went to Naples, Italy with the USS Ready. Great ship, 35 people counting the captain. We pulled right into Monte Carlo next to the Calypso. And my last 2 years in the Navy, I was on the fleet flagship for the Mediterranean Fleet, the USS Albany, that you see here moored in Gaeta, Italy, its home port. So I specifically, though, wanted to go to Japan first because I wanted to watch the auras of Zen Buddhist monks. Because as I was searching, I found that I know a lot of people had good results with Zen, but it seemed to be overly heavy mentally, that you had to concentrate. You know, Zen is these impossible questions. You know the sound of two hands clapping, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Or some of the even more funny ones are, you know, if a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there to hear it, does it still make a sound? I'm a very secure man, so I kind of laugh at I don't know, Patty, if you've ever heard the variation of that. If a man is talking in the forest and nobody's there to hear him, is he still wrong? But when I watched the auras of these Zen Buddhist monks thinking about these impossible questions, you'd watch their auras tighten and tighten and tighten because they were concentrating so hard till they got so tight, they just exhausted themselves and they shifted up to those soul dimensions. You saw the body aura dim and the soul aura brighten. If people have ever seen paintings of saints and religious figures, that's where they have the halo. And these monks would have insights and tap deep feelings of serenity after they shifted, but they would frequently come back with migraines. And I said, well, that's not good. So I jokingly called what they did crunch catapulting for migraines. And the soul shift technique that we'll be teaching people on the 17th is one of the foundations for how to get into those dimensions beyond easily in 5 to 10 seconds when you get good at it, 2 to 3 minutes when you're first learning it. But before I go more into that, let me just come back to that 5 elements of a brain compatible learning environment. One of those elements is enriched environment. So part of my journey traveling the world was to go to different environments. And in those exploratory environments, literally being a traveler, not just through time and lifetimes, but different cultures, different environments trigger even deeper learning. And remember I said I wanted people to see how to weave this into their life? You don't have to go to Japan to do that. In your own city, visit different neighborhoods, different cultures. Use life's classroom as a way of being that enriched environment that triggers deeper exploration and learning within you. But that was part of why, you know, I founded Free Soul in Sedona. Sedona, we'll talk about at a later time, has a unique combination of characteristics. It was the best I ever found for being able to be like spiritual catalysts. In chemistry, a catalyst is something that makes a reaction run faster. And we'll get to it later. The vortexes in Sedona, plus its colors, seems to help people go to their next level a little more quickly and to give them a deep peace and regeneration. And founding an organization, as you can imagine, is challenging, especially as you're raising a young family, which I was. So in many ways, Sedona was my retreat center. It helped me come back and do the types of renewal that I needed. But I wove in everything that you've heard about so far, and in particular, that foundation from Edgar Cayce's story, having an honorable intent. Growing up in Southern California from 10 through high school, I'd seen a lot of abuses in spiritual things, and it seemed that if people wanted to learn about meditation, mind-body healing, there was either a lot of push for them to get into something that was really more commercialism, designed to make a profit, or a lot of pressure to leave their faith. You have to be a devotee of a guru just to learn about mind-body healing or meditation. And I didn't feel that was right. I feel these are secrets from science that people of all faiths can use. And I'm a real fan of the comedian Swami Beyondananda. One of his shticks is, nobody should ever go to a guru unless it's themselves. Because if you just spell it slowly, guru is G. You are you. So I founded Free Soul as a 501c3 nonprofit. And the whole theme is your birthright is to be a free soul, to be that pioneer exploring your potentials. Now, as I entered into my midlife, one of my phrases was always, make life a quest, not a test. And you are a soul, you have a body. When all of a sudden I had 2 kids and a mortgage and trying to, work with an expanding national and going international foundation, I had a lot more stresses, and staying in that serene, soul-shifted state of mind was not as easy. So I started looking in lost brain science for what could be causing that. I want to say I'm incredibly proud of my wife. She's not the oldest. She's the longest continuous serving public school teacher in Sedona. She's on her 39th year and 14th principal. And a lot was coming out in brain education, particularly Susan Kovalik's 5 Elements of a Brain Compatible Learning Environment, about the limbic system of the brain. That the limbic system is actually the part of the brain that creates most of our misery. The brain scientists say it generates over 90% of your negative emotions, your worries, hurts, angers, or fears. And the limbic system is that darker loop in the center, that small upper 2 higher loops. Those are part of the olfactory system, which is why smell can also be a limbic soother or an enricher. Having an incense that soothes you. Many people like Flagstaff, Arizona, because it has the highest concentration of ponderosa pine trees that supposedly put out a vanilla smell. I don't know what actual smell or oil it is, the name of it, that goes with the redwoods. But when I'm in the redwood forest of Sequoia National Park, or parts of Yosemite where the giant sequoias are, something about that smell tunes me into the deep wisdom of those trees, the timelessness. But learning about the limbic brain, it made sense to me. That's the anchor chain. That because people don't know how to counter limbic stress, it's like an anchor on the soul balloon. Superstrings physics says you exist in dimensions beyond. That's the latest in science that is actually transforming all of science the same way Einstein's discoveries did in the early 1900s. And again, we'll go more in depth about that in the October 17th session that's also free, Science for Living as a Soul, when we talk about keys for understanding soul from science and spirituality. But to me, this was the missing link. Why do deeply religious people, why do deeply faithful people, why do people who've been meditating forever still have hurts or anticipatory anxiety or, still on edge about things where they can't tap full serenity all the time in daily life? And I realized that the limbic brain is what keeps us in struggle, suffering. Now, even though Sedona is a very spiritual city, we still have a lot of conservative elements. And, my wife says, well, Pete, I love you, but I can't teach my 5th and 6th graders, make life a quest, not a test. That sounds a little too new agey. So she makes the distinction. I think of all struggle as your limbic suffering, but with her students, she teaches mostly gifted ed. And those kids don't have a lot of problems with stuff. So when they hit something they can't do, they freak out. And she says, I want you to understand the difference between destructive struggle and productive struggle. And she's really good at, kinesthetically and visually demonstrating this. I may not be as good as she is, but she says, when you're in destructive struggle, here's what you look like. Think about it. When you're really stressing with things, how do you look and feel inside? And that's crushing your immune system and all of your health issues. When you're in productive struggle, here's what you look like. You're wondering how to solve that problem. And what I like to point out to people, first of all, when you're in destructive struggle or when you're being affected by limbic things, it's not your fault. Don't go, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? It's not your fault. It's your physiology. Learn to counter the negative aspects of that physiology. Instead of having a stressful life, go to having a wonderful life. Learn how to be the river, not just the rapids or the rocks. Learn how to be happy instead of harried, excited by life, quest, not exhausted by life, test. Anybody who tells you their stress reduction training does away with stress, they're lying. Life is stress. The key is, don't let life stresses become distress, dis-ease, disease. And that's where that comes into play. And so, from that, my second book, Access Your Brain's Joy Center, was developed, which chapter 1 teaches people how to trigger mood elevation fibers in the brain, counter limbic, and get a sense of inner mood elevation for free. Instead of having electrode implantation that they used to do, or having to take a drug, or alcohol, or things that are externals that people become dependent and addicted on. When I was first making this discovery, I was lecturing in Denver about the book, and this doctor said, sitting right in the front row, what an amazing discovery. Too bad it's not going to make you rich and probably won't go anywhere. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, it's not going to make you rich because there's no money in it. You teach people how to find and trigger those fibers for themselves, they don't need you anymore. And to an extent, he's right. My other books sell better. Where he's wrong, I do a lot of work with vets for PTSD relief. Because the Access Your Brain's Joy Center book is also in 4 other languages. Again, you can see what those are on freesoul.net. It's German, Dutch, Italian, and for some reason Czech. I got a letter from a Czech Special Forces captain in Afghanistan who was using that discovery in chapter 1 to help people, particularly as men, with their PTSD. And that makes it worthwhile for me for life. And I do teach, I just recently taught at the Truman VA Hospital in Columbia, Missouri, the big hospital that's associated with the University of Missouri and for vets all through that part of the country. As much as I like chapter 1 for how to trigger those fibers, I've actually come to realize that chapter 2, the 60 pages of chapter 2, may be as important. I'm an old Navy guy. On ships, the worst thing is fire, because fire heats up the metal of the ships. And most fires are oil or gas-based, so you can put out the fire, but if the metal is still hot, which it tends to be for quite some time, it reflashes the fire. And many people know spiritual ways of soothing limbic brain. Maybe they they do a particular type of chanting or oming, or they do Tai Chi or yoga, and they feel good because they soothe limbic and they soul shift. But then they feel bad again 5 minutes later because the issues in their life that are triggering limbic brain reflash that limbic anxiety hamster wheel. And then they again go, what's the matter with me? I thought I was above that. Why can't I? So chapter 2 is all the reflashers, all the different things that can trigger you to reflash in worries, hurts, angers, fears. And, I actually put at the back in the quick reference guides a page that has each of those 4 different types of countering reflashers. So it's like people could just rip out those 4 pages, or if they go to freesoul.net and order the book either as a digital download, get the PDF, or the digital download and the product, they could copy those 4 pages and print them to index cards and carry with them for things they know tend to trigger them. So they get out of that upset sooner, as well as chapter 5 on how to use it for weight management or pain control or success without the achievement addiction or enhancing the loving.
Hmm.
You have any questions for me, Patty?
Wow. I lost you for a minute. I'm not sure it's my Ronnie's. So, every good teacher, I think, has had the experiences like you talk about. You have had to have the experience to be a good teacher, I feel. And I've been on a spiritual path for about 30 years myself. And I've been very fortunate to be with amazing people that have.
Well, I lost Patty's question. I don't know if she froze with her new internet. Do you have me, Ronney? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear Ronney now, but still not Patty.
Patty went out too, and a few minutes ago you went out. So I think this unstable connection that we've experienced a little bit today is with us now. So Patty's still open, but
Do you have any questions on what we've covered so far, Ronney?
I don't know that I have a question, but I do have a comment that every class I've ever had with you has always just rocked my world and changed it on a daily basis. And so it's so exciting to be doing this again. And I know that you're always updating everything that's going on in the world. And so it's really, really exciting to be part of all of this for me.
And that's why, I want to say, for the people who are not able to join us live today, who may be getting the recording of this, if they've been longtime Free Soul students, the free program on the 17th of October, 2 weeks from today, will be foundation material that they've probably heard before, but they may not have heard some of the latest updates I've put into it. And think of it as we're going to put a giant brand new penthouse on the building. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure the roof that we're putting that penthouse on is fully solid. So I would encourage everybody to sign in for that additional free program on the 17th, so that when we start the 4 paid classes that we do want you to register ahead for, starting October 24th, they have all that foundation solid. And we can go to this brand new system, a simple to remember 4-step system for not only feeling better, but soaring to new levels of insight and enlightenment, and being able to clear and let the spark of the divine shine through you even more than it ever has.
Patty, can you hear now?
But
Patty, can you hear now?
I'm back. I don't know. I just had my internet changed. So yeah, I'm back.
Okay, maybe you want to rephrase the question you had for Pete a little earlier, because this unstable network we've got going today didn't allow you to say everything.
Oh, it didn't. I was just talking about my own spiritual journey and my own healing path and how important it was, for me to access that I didn't know about the limbic brain. I would come home after healing and working with patients exhausted, or healing coworkers or whatever it was. So for me, this is going to be a great process to go through to help me.
Since we're on the page that's showing the question marks, I want to remind people that Einstein's, one of his famous quotes is, "It's not knowing the answers, it's knowing the questions," which is why I like to make life a quest, not a test. But the same way people will punish themselves when they go limbic. What's wrong with me? Why was I negative? Why am I still fearful? Or why can that person still hurt me? If you transform it to that exploring, questing concept, what are the reasons that this is triggered? I mean, I recently went through a phase where we had my wife's 92-year-old mom living with us. I don't call her in-law, I called her loved one, because she was such a sweetheart. But it was the toughest time in my life since having 2 in diapers, because I literally, I didn't have the 5 to 10 minutes to do meditations I used to. Remember, I'm a chemistry nerd. In chemistry, there's those things called catalysts. And a lot of what's taught is, well, you can lower blood pressure or you can tap soul if you do 20 to 30-minute meditations twice a day. Raising 2 active boys, I was lucky if they gave me 20 to 30 minutes twice a decade to meditate. So I said, there's got to be mind, body, spirit catalysts that allow you to do this stuff in 20 to 30 seconds when you get good at it, 2 to 3 minutes when you're first learning it. And if someone hasn't done our core material, that is part of what I'll be teaching on the 17th. I'll be teaching 1 or more rapid blood pressure lowering techniques that also drain stress out of the aura, so that you can tap those higher states of mind quickly. And then when you're not doing things as well as you are, or you'd like to, instead of my going around with the 92-year-old and all the stresses going, life stinks, I don't have a moment time, I could say, how can I use this as a catalyst for new discoveries for how to do it even quicker? And in some ways, the piece of my earlier background we didn't cover was I was a competitive swimmer from age 7 through high school, through college, actually. And in that type of sport, swimming or long distance running, you have intense conditioning phases for the big conference championships, national championships. So I had that background. And one of the things that helped me get out of the struggle of that intense stress of caring for multiple ill relatives at that time was, I'm going to just consider this spiritual conditioning. I'm going to consider it gathering building material for a whole new level of my skyscraper. And everybody's seen a construction site. It's a mess. The bigger the building you're going to have, the bigger the mess. So when you're in the middle of stuff, don't blame yourself. If you've ever seen how they make polished stones, they tumble them in grit. We all have grit in our lives, or stuff that rhymes with grit. We can either be stinking up the joint, or we can be making fertilizer. We can either be limbically wallowing in the mud, or we can be making adobe. So that's why I like that phrase, don't punish, polish. Rather than what's wrong with me, what's new about this? And how can I use what's new about this to get a deeper insight of how limbic brain can suck me in to suffering. Imagine what your life would be like if you still had all the stuff you're dealing with, but instead of destructive struggle, you were in productive, wondering struggle, or you were enjoying the journey of the quest. Nobody says a quest is easy. The difference is the minute you say quest, you think exploration, adventure, freedom. Your birthright is to have the freedom to be exploring all of the challenges of life without suffering and unhappiness. Your birthright is to be an unlimited free soul. But that gets us back to Sedona. Part of the reason I founded my organization in Sedona was the Vortex, the famous Vortex meditation sites. Now, Ronnie's done a wonderful job of getting all these slides up. I forgot, and I didn't want to bug her first thing this morning, but you can go on the freesoul.net website and see the picture of the cover of my book, Scientific Vortex Information. It has this same picture of Cathedral Rock, and for people who can't come to Sedona, it not only explains all of Sedona's vortexes, but it also teaches you how to find similar places closer to home. And the thing I'm excited about, since we updated the Free Soul website, where people can download the digital versions as well as get the physical product, is they can download the pictures from that book of Sedona. So they can have those even when they can't be in Sedona. But it is a great place when you're ready for your next quantum leap to come. I give 2 presentations every week on scientific vortex information that weaves in all 3 of my books. And then every February, usually the President's holiday weekend, I do the Free Soul retreat for the year where I'm bringing out new things. The 2019 one is going to teach people brand new advanced psychic sensing, deeper levels of soul vision for being able to sense life purpose threads in your life and the lives of people you intertwine with. And then also how to do an even deeper level of healing from the in-between that involves letting that spark of the divine shine through you. The Science for Living as a Soul 2 DVD set that I have, that's shown in like a beginning and an end slide, it can give you a lot of foundation materials for that. So if anybody wants to get that either as a digital download or physical product before we start the 4 classes on the 24th, it'll help you do everything easier. But we're going to be building on those 2 DVD sets, particularly for this last concept. Some of this new energy that physicists have discovered that makes superstrings physics look like the tip of the iceberg may actually be the scientific explanation. And by the way, the physicists say this new energy, this expansive force, is 15 times more powerful than what the average person thinks of as the whole universe put together. It is a huge untapped force for mind expansion, vitality enhancement, possibly even longevity enhancement. And I'll be explaining why that as we go through those classes. But this new energy may actually be the scientific explanation, just as superstrings physics was for we all are souls, the scientific explanation that we all have a connection to the divine within us. And then if we can clear what's obscuring its radiance, we can let it shine through us. And instead of just going with the flow, we can glow with the flow. We can literally live enlightened and be the river, not just the rapids or the rocks. And I want to encourage everybody to join us for that. Again, the next session we'll be doing is a foundation. That will be on the 17th of October. That will be the Science for Living as a Soul class. And then starting the 24th of October through the 14th of November will be once every Thursday, the 4 live classes teaching each of those 4 C's for how to foresee greater happiness, success, and serenity in your future. We do encourage people to register ahead of time. If someone can't make a particular session, they will be able, for a lesser cost, to be able to receive the recording of that session. But we specifically set the prices reasonable, matching with Free Soul's nonprofit character. And if you do, the extra 25 for having the recordings, then you can watch them over and over again, as well as join us live and be able to ask questions interactively live. I want to thank you for letting me share with you today. And again, I want to come back to my theme for this. It was a joy for me to recount my life's journey. That's not what's important. What's important is seeing how those different pieces we touched on can be like Legos or individual building blocks that lead you to building the beauty of your own soul crystal of enlightenment. Give yourself choices. Allow yourself to be exploring. Use limbic brain. Get to an enriched environment. Make the content meaningful. What is going on in your life? If you have problems in your life, don't blame yourself. That's the meaningful content. How can those things be catalysts for insights that are what you need to know at this time to build your next level? And then last but not least, we have an eternity to get it done. Planet Earth is actually set up so there's never enough time. That's one of the limbic stressors. But remember, adequate time. Always have adequate time if you can think about just how to take one thing that day from test to quest. I hope you'll join us coming up in the future for Science for Living as a Soul and foreseeing your future. Or I hope to meet you in Sedona, either at a Vortex presentation or a retreat, or meet you through any of my books or materials that you can order through freesoul.net. And I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful host, Ronney, and Patty, our interviewer, to finish out.
I'd like to say one thing, and that is we will have, for the people that sign up for the class, a private Facebook page where you can go and put in any questions, concerns, any things you want to share. And we will interact there, and then Pete will look at those and answer questions on Facebook, as well as during our live classes every week. So it's a whole different platform for sharing with everybody. And so that will happen. You can also always email me, and I will get right back to you as fast as possible with any concerns, any additions, any questions you have, so that we can keep on top of this and you can get the best out of what we're doing. And please join us for Pete's next free presentation. There's nothing to lose, there's only to gain with that. And I'm going to turn this over to Patty now. Thank you for joining us today. Sorry for a couple glitches here. I don't know what is happening in those ethers up there, but I guess we had some company joining us today. Okay, Patty, it's all yours.
Well, again, thank you, Ronney. And Pete, I can't thank you enough for presenting this so everybody gets to meet you personally. To me, that's great. To be able to this series is going to be full, I think, especially for myself. So I encourage everyone to sign up, because it doesn't matter what profession or what you're doing. I think this will be really experiential for everyone that takes this course. I know it will be for me. So please sign up, bring a friend. If you can't be on every session, at least try to go to the Facebook page and try to get the information, because all of it's very valuable, trust me. So thank you again. I really look forward to talking with you soon.
And we set the time so people across the country, at least in the US, can have a lunch break that nourishes them spiritually, not just physically.
Perfect.
On the West Coast, they take an early lunch. On the East Coast, a later lunch. But come join us, and since you can turn off your video, you can be eating galore and still hear and see what's going on.
Okay.
Pete, and I think it's Patty, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's all right.
Ronnie, thank you for this. I was asking on chat if you could share with us this slide, because I would like to put it on my Facebook and my Twitter to let people know, both for my integrated holistic and all my other friends that might be interested in this, as I try to mention Pete's work and all my classes. So this slide will be great for me to be able to put on my 3 Facebook pages to advertise and see if we can get more people in here.
Are you also okay if we send both slides, this one and the first one that has the information about the October?
Yes, you want, Pete or Patty or whoever's doing this. Send me everything you got.
We'll have Ronney send you both the October 17th slide and the one about the 24th to the 14th.
Perfect. And if you have a little blurb, then I'll put it in too. Whatever you want to send me, just send me. And I am at loose, you know, you have my email, Ronnie.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for the support. We love that. And anyone else who wants to pass on Pete's wonderful work, we want to share this with everyone.
I've only been with Pete for about, 38 years?
Yep. And everybody does things differently.
Right.
Very feeling based. I tend to be more analytical and word based. So, you know, quest not test works for me. One retreat Luce came out to, and the place we were having the retreat in Oak Peak Canyon, after 11 at night, they turned off their light, and Luce drove past the place all the way up to Flagstaff, had to come back, probably added an hour to when she got in, flying from the East Coast. And if it had been me, I would have been kind of grumpy. She was Miss Smiles the next day. And when I asked her, how can you be that way? She goes, my dad. My dad always told me, whatever happens, it's just part of the vacation. And, you know, you match that with quest not test. We're all on a journey of a beautiful learning spiritual vacation here on planet Earth. And I hope you'll allow me to share some of the things that have been trail markers along the way and breakthrough technique discoveries. That's the big difference. What the other programs will have will be techniques. This was more lecture. We're going to have 2 to 4 techniques actually being led through meditations in each of the next 5 presentations. So bless you for sharing that with me all those years ago, Luce. I still use it in my life. It's all part of the vacation.
Thank you, Pete, for everything you do for us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Until next time.